Instead of saying Russia, the country, they'll say Putin, Putin, Putin. Putin did this, Putin did that, Putin decided this, Putin is thinking this, Putin is feeling this. It's always about this cartoon villain, right? Dr. Evil. This is a really cheap propaganda tactic, you know, like they try to make it about like one guy being some nut job who's like bent on world domination and he just wants to murder puppies or something, you know, and drink their blood. Instead of giving you the context, you have Russia and you have, you know, the United States, and they've been at each other's necks for decades. They both have nuclear weapons. They should get the fuck away from each other, and we should not, you know, cook the planet with a thermonuclear apocalypse. No, we can't talk about that. It's Putin. Putin. Really, this is what is so angering. It's like they turn the complexity of international politics into something like a comic book. You know, it's so cheap. It's so garbage. He's comparing the threat now with the Cuban Missile Crisis. He is right, but not the way that you know he's portraying it. This situation is not like the Cuban Missile Crisis because of the Russians. This is like the Cuban Missile Crisis because of you and your predecessors who've been pumping those weapons in Ukraine for years. And it's nothing to do with Ukraine only. It's you know, Poland, it's the whole East Bloc, which they absorbed and they incorporated into NATO. You fucking lied to the Russians. You told them one thing and then you did the other. You fucking lied, and they're pissed. You did this shit to Ukraine. You are doing this to the world with the sanctions. The Russians didn't lie. You lied. You told them we will leave the east of Europe alone. We don't expand past Germany. NATO doubled its membership. Let me tell you something, man. If the Russians did not view that as a threat, I would think that they are either bots, they are morons, or they are high on some crazy shit. The Russians would be fucking stupid as shit to look at NATO doubling in size, coming towards their borders, and not do anything, and not say, you know, back off, or we're going to have to use these nukes. If you, you know, especially if you try using them against us, which Zelensky's coming out and saying, yeah, let's preemptively strike them. Is he stupid? Does he want to kill us all? What is wrong with this man? The Cuban Missile Crisis, let me remind you of something. The only reason the Soviets put nuclear missiles in Cuba, well, there are two reasons. Number one, the U.S. tried to coup the government in Cuba. So obviously, you know, when you try to overthrow the government, they're going to feel threatened. That government is going to go look for help. So that's number one. The Bay of Pigs is what I'm talking about. And the other reason, which they don't tell you, is that the Americans put nukes next to Russia first. They put Jupiter missiles in Turkey. And that's why Turkey's a NATO member, because they want something that's in NATO, that's, you know, at the helm of the Middle East and in striking range of the Russians. That's why the Russians put nukes in Cuba, because you tried screwing them first. And that's why Kennedy, you know, they make him out to look like some big hero. Like, I mean, I'm not saying he was, you know, the worst president or something, but listen, Kennedy was embarrassed to admit that he had agreed with the Russians to withdraw the Jupiter missiles from Turkey. He had to hide that because, look at this mentality. Like, diplomacy with Russians is viewed as a bad thing. It's not okay to tell the Americans, yes, I agreed to remove the Jupiter missiles if they remove their missiles. Like, just a straight up deal, clear cut. So to avoid people finding out, they did it, I think, it was a couple months later. So within a year, they removed them from Turkey to avoid anyone like realizing what was going on. But they don't tell you that part, right? It's again, this victim mentality, like, oh, America's the victim, the West is the victim. You know, it's always the same people who are the axis of evil, which is, again, this is a Bush term. David Frum, his speechwriter, came up with that, which, again, it goes back to this cartoon, this comic book mentality, the axis of evil. Like, it's some fucking gang of people who drink whiskey and, like, slap women or something. You know, like, they try to paint the Iranians, the Russians, the Koreans, the Venezuelans, like, anyone who won't give them their resources and won't play ball with Israel is the axis of evil. You know, it's insane.